You try both.
We are, and I'm here with the people who founded Holy Cow Beef and my beautiful daughter, Carlisle Diana. How's everyone today?
Doing great.
Doing
Thanks
great.
for having us back. We love your podcast best. Don't tell the Meat Mafia guys, but
It's the first thing I'm going to do when I leave here.
Right? Yeah. We are not humble.
Well, I am usually too busy flirting with them to show off. No, I'm
right.
kidding.
We expected Carlisle to get up on the stage and do a presentation. That would
Right?
have been nice.
She would actually be a powerful speaker. The girl has got it going on, and she's very accustomed to the stage, so that won't make her nervous one bit. But so you guys got to meet in Nashville for the Meat Mafia's was it a workshop?
Alternative Health Summit is
Oh,
what it
cool.
was. Yeah, it was very cool. And so we were the only regenerative farmers there, or ranchers. So that was pretty cool. They did a really good job of getting people from every different sector to kind of give, I mean, everything from even manufacturing ice barrels. We got to hear his story and how he started the business and how that's an alternative, how it contributes to alternative health. So anyways, they did a great job. I can't say enough. That was a really cool summit.
And there was a men and women group that were speaking specifically about both male and female hormones.
Yeah.
That was a really good
That was
segment.
a good one. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, we aren't being fed it any other way. We have to seek it out ourselves.
Yes.
And what's cool about it is it's a natural filter for bringing like-minded people, and you automatically end up loving everybody, right?
Oh, totally. Yes, yes, absolutely. So yeah, that makes, we've been using this term in our office for about a month now. That made a good vibe. And it's like, what's a vibe? But the vibe is very good. So
You guys are so cool.
totally.
I love it. And so I would love to start with Weldon, because I just want to remind people that Weldon was one of the people who participated in making that stamp possible for grass-fed, 100% grass-fed beef that's on some of the meat labels. And so you're a little bit more on that end of the business. So I would just love to get a quick update on, what's going on, how you see beef commodity opposed to local. I just want to hear anything that is in your mind that you can share with us.
Okay. Well, number one, I would want your listeners to know that if they can go out and shake the hand of a rancher and get to know that rancher personally, he's more than likely, probably 99%, he will tell the truth on how he finishes his cattle, what they're fed, if they're fed something, what his medicinal protocols are, how he handles the animals that will go into the food supply. And then the customer has met the rancher, won't have food insecurity. They can, bargain with their rancher. I want one beef a year. And then the rancher probably has a relationship with a processor. It gets fabricated and you'll always have red meat in your freezer. Number one, to me, that is what all Americans need to be doing. Is that really possible for New York City people and in really congested metroplexes? Probably not. So then if it's possible, that's the number one thing. And then secondly, you're going to be going to these grocery store models where you're now dependent on how they label the meat and what their protocols are for that product. And by far, I think Whole Foods across the nation probably does the best job. Excuse me. The wind's blowing in West Texas a little bit. So that is from glyphosate.
Breathing glyphosate
in our air. Thank you, Monsanto. So they're always all about our health, as you know, right? And so Whole Foods is, 400 plus stores across the nation, and you can trust that what's in the meat counter is the right kind of meat that they want to be eating. Their labeling is a little difficult to understand, so you just need to talk to the butcher and say, I want grass finished beef, and that product manager in that behind that meat counter will point you in the right direction. After that, with the grocery stores, it gets a little bit confusing because the Farm Service Agency, FSA, that is the bigger, is the overriding authority over our food system. If you think of the food pyramid that all the kids eat, their school breakfast, this food is really highly processed. It is not healthy for our kids, certainly who are developing. It's not healthy for any of us to be consuming the seed oils and the grain finished beef. And that's what's in most of the grocery stores. And now we get to the consumer who is totally confused because there is a grass-fed label on meat that has come straight from the feedlot. And that was a label that was kind of purchased, if you want to say it. How easy is it to pay off your legislator, senator, representative, and get a label on beef? So Tom Vilsack was the head of the USDA and was responsible for withdrawing the only true grass-fed label that we've had in this country. And people like Will Harris from White Oak Pastures and ourselves, we went to Austin, and you're seeing Ann hold up this. And I don't know if you can see that line that goes across there. It says withdrawn, which means Tom Vilsack, one of his departments, withdrew what was at that time in 2016 a grass-fed label. That meant that product was finished on grass. Why did they do that? Well, you can put a lot of words on the paper, and it basically says we're going to throw a bone to the feedlot industry. Because they pay us money, and you're going to get the legislation you pay for. So Tom Vilsack is the bad guy who changed the grass-fed label that we were able to put into place in 2005 in Austin with FSIS, that's the food safety group that controls labeling. And so then the consumer was really on their own. You couldn't go to Kroger or a local store here in Lubbock.
And really know.
And United, and you would not know. And you could talk to the butcher and he wouldn't know.
Right.
It's just a dumbed down system. Now that's number one. Number two, it gets even worse that the big 4 or 5 processors, and I'll list them, Tyson, Cargill, JBS, IBP, control roughly 85% of the beef industry processing. And this is a sleight of hand that they do, where they are taking American beef and selling it overseas at a premium to what they pay the American rancher for it. This is the sad part. The American ranchers getting underpaid so that the food processing companies can ship the prime American beef overseas at a premium. They import the South African, Central American, South American beef. And I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying you don't know what it is.
Right.
And it's imported. And thanks to this group within the USDA that does this, they get to repackage it at the port, and they put a new label on it called Product of the USA, which is totally deceiving. And to be honest, it's just an outright lie. They know it's coming in from overseas, but because it gets repackaged, that allows the government to say, oh, then they can label it a product of the USA. And so the consumer going to the butcher there at the grocery store has no idea where that meat really came from. And then you take that and you say, Warren Buffett is running Burlington Northern and burning a lot of diesel. These ships and planes that are flying and shipping
Right.
all over the world.
Makes
and
no sense.
Where's the leftist agenda saying, hey, that's, polluting the environment with greenhouse gases? They don't go and protest JBS or Tyson or Cargill or IBP or Warren Buffett's Burlington Northern for doing that. They point the finger at the local rancher and saying, let's institute a cow fart tax because they're polluting the environment, when in reality, the truth is that cattle grazing on grass are sequestering the carbon from the atmosphere, unlike the feedlot, which is really an environmental hazard on what goes in the feedlot. So at every angle that you look at our beef industry, the American ranchers being attacked, their products being sold overseas for a profit, they're re-importing cheaper beef, but with a U.S. label on it, all because our government looks the other way and allows that.
Yeah.
So it's put the American rancher at a huge disadvantage on world economics, and all because of our own government. It's almost like, how do we slowly kill all the industries that are really worth having in the US? And so that
I read a lot about how the Chinese kind of took over the pig industry on the East Coast. And then just like 10 days ago, the Hawaiian, there's like this little turf war going on with Parker Ranch, and the Melaleuca billionaire, he moved in. Have you heard about this, Anne?
No.
You look like you did.
No.
So what happened was he went into Hawaii and he started a like a processing plant, and he's paying them 20% less, and he's calling it, it's fair because more ranchers can do stuff. Like, everything is always about it being fair. It's just crazy. Now, luckily, Parker Ranch was interviewed, and they said, we aren't affected financially by this. We're just making adjustments. But the people of Hawaii are being hurt because they're not getting what they were used to getting. And I mean, they showed Parker Ranch, and I mean, the beautiful Hawaiian grasses that those cows are chewing on. Oh my gosh. Like, I can't imagine how good that beef is. But there were a couple ranchers that said that they've decided just to ship theirs over back to the States. But that's exactly what you're talking about. And it reminds me of the pizza thing. Like, everything is so upside down and backwards, right? Like, we can't have the coal pizza ovens in New York City, but we can have like huge ships moving cow around. And somebody was saying, like, just 1 year of a private jet is like 800 years of a coal finished or a coal pizza oven. I mean, it's just,
but who's flying in those jets?
I know.
And that's
Right.
who's making our legislation. Our congressmen are flying in those jets, our Hollywood jet set, all those people, and they have a lot of influence. They're not trying to participate in the economy at the same level the average American does. And so we're the ones experiencing inflation. I'll call it Biden's inflation, and how much that has hurt the average American family, having to pay higher electric bills. We can't have gas stoves. We can't have the gas-fired or wood-burning pizzas, restaurants in New York. So basically, anything that comes out as legislation, it really is fairly dubious. You have to get into the details and realize how they've, and the Democrats are the best in the world at this. I mean, the Build Back Better,
They are.
Yeah.
really Build Back Better. It's really just spending a lot of money to pay off all the crony Democrats. And so it's just extremely deceptive is the bottom line.
Yeah, that's why meeting the rancher with your first point was so great. But I want to rewind a little bit to your last point. I think there is a huge deception that you just touched on, and that was the amount of like carbon emissions, or So can you elaborate a little bit more on the difference between the huge feedlots and what you guys are doing as far as environmental impact?
Oh, that is a really good one. If the average American would take a vacation and go and drive by any one of dozens and dozens of feedlots from Lubbock, Texas, going north into Nebraska, and be sure and roll down the windows so you can smell the aroma.
I have done that. Oh my gosh, it's
And
horrible.
It will turn your stomach upside down. These poor animals are, 10,000 animals in one set of pens being fed, GMO corn and GMO soy. And that becomes the beef that, they're going to ship overseas, or that you're going to eat here domestically. And so it's really an environmental hazard. You compare that to the average American rancher raising beef on their ranch. Those cattle are enjoying sunshine, fresh water, and ample forage every day to make them exactly what God intended them to be. So the grass absorbs the energy from the sun, that's free. And then they're drinking the water that the rancher has provided to those animals. And then they turn into the beef that will go into your freezer if you know that individual rancher, and you get to control the quality of what you're eating. And that is a win-win scenario for the rancher and the consumer. So
Talk about the carbon sequestration.
in carbon sequestration, the Obama administration started this. We're going to institute a fart tax because cattle grazing in the pasture are polluting the environment, when as you would imagine, it's exactly the opposite.
Right.
Cattle on grass sequester carbon dioxide, and roughly for every pound of beef you eat,
Grass finished.
out from your local rancher, sequesters, I think it's 2.5 pounds of carbon dioxide for every pound of beef you eat from a rancher that you know. So that's reducing
Yes.
the global warming. But then our legislators, they're not focused on the feedlots. They're focused on the local cattle rancher when the
Absolutely.
feedlots are there. And, it's an
There is
animal.
no carbon sequestration in a feedlot.
Yeah, there's no carbon sequestration. The runoff from those feedlots is just very toxic. The cattle are sick. In fact, this is a good statistic. And it's still somewhat accurate, I would think. This was years ago, that 70% of all the antibiotics that are sold in the United States are sold to feedlots.
Ooh.
Can you believe that? 70%.
And if they don't give them that antibiotic in their feed, all the animals are going to die.
Yeah.
In fact, if you keep animals in a feedlot too long, the mortality rate skyrockets. And eventually, because they've done these experiments, how long can we keep cattle in the feedlot and then before they die? And they all die eventually in a feedlot.
And it's less than 200 days. So before they die. So most feeders are fed 160,
190 to 120,
Yeah.
150 days.
Yeah.
And then they're sold and processed. So basically, when you consume that product from the feedlot, it is on its way to dying before you eat it.
Sick animal.
Whereas animals out on pasture in the open sunlight, like our animals are, we probably have a 0.25% incident where we might have to rope an animal and give it a shot of B12 and Banamine, which is like an aspirin, and the next day they're fine. We lose 2 or 3 animals a year, most often to a lightning strike, a bolt of.
Oh, wow. I wouldn't have guessed that.
Whoa.
I know, right?
But that's just Mother Nature, and it's like, okay, that's going to happen. But we just don't lose animals to sickness very often, and it's a very, very low percentage. That's how healthy our animals are.
Mhm.
And you
I love
compare
it.
pasture finished to feedlot, there's just no comparison.
Mhm.
And just so you know, the U.S. Cattlemen's Association is really a good group to support. You write that down, join them, become a member. They are introducing legislation to return this part that was withdrawn under Obama. It's called COOL, Country of Origin Labeling. So when meat was brought in from South America, it was going to have a label. This meat is from Argentina. It's from Mexico. It's from Uruguay. It's from wherever it is. Obama withdrew that also.
Right.
So there's no country of origin labeling anymore, but your U.S. Cattlemen's Association is trying to get that legislation passed so that we start that again. And then, of course, the grass-fed label was removed with that sheet of paper we saw earlier. And that was in 2016. So here we are in 2023. They've gotten away with this for a long time, and the American consumer is the victim.
Mhm, for sure.
Well, it just kind of shows how long they've been. I mean, this was a long game for them. If you think about how they had to put these things in place before, so that you guys were like trapped before you even began, right? But then you guys and the Beef Initiative and many of the people that you've met are working around it. And so what do you see for the next maybe couple of years that is hopeful and wonderful?
Well, I'm pretty optimistic that more and more people are meeting their local rancher. And then they're in total control of their meat supply. The government has nothing to do with it, especially when it comes down to the feedlots. Or now the government's going to require the mRNA vaccine on cattle. And they say it's for upper respiratory so the cattle can be healthy. Well, just take them out of the feedlot and they'll all be healthy. And we don't need the mRNA vaccine. But
Right.
these people that go to their local ranchers, when people come to us and call us, they say, are your cattle vaccinated with the mRNA vaccine? And we say, no, they're not. And so then they have that security and knowledge of knowing that they're not being exposed to Pfizer or whomever is manufacturing that newest vaccine for cattle. All this is about money, and so much money is changing hands between our legislators, our regulators, and the feedlot industry, and all the companies that kind of participate in that, like Monsanto growing the GMO corn and soy that gets fed to the feedlots, and Burlington Northern's trains that are hauling those grains, from wherever they picked it up to the feedlots. If you go to Hereford, Texas, park your car on the side of the road on Highway 80, you can watch train after train after train. They might have 30 cars, 50 cars full of corn and soy that are being delivered at night to the feedlots, because they won't deliver it during the daytime because too many people stop and take photos. So they try to be as non-transparent as possible. They want to hide it. They unload all that grain, and the next day, Burlington Northern trains are there again with their carloads and carloads of corn and soy to feed to feed to the cattle in the feedlot. And all that could be eliminated if everyone would meet their own rancher and start supporting those people. Because that same rancher, if he can't sell that animal retail to a consumer, he's going to sell to a buying group that's going to send them to the feedlot.
Yeah.
They can go one way or the other. They're going to go to the consumer direct, or they're going to go to the feedlot.
Yeah. And so we need more people purchasing direct. And, I do believe, though, like I look at what you guys are doing. So anyone that's in Texas, in particular, like the major cities, still have access to you guys because you deliver in Dallas and Houston and Austin.
We don't deliver to Houston. We ship to Houston, but we
Okay.
deliver to Austin, Dallas.
Okay. So you ship to, okay.
Midland, yeah.
And don't forget,
Abilene, all the cities in between.
these
so,
are all big metroplexes.
Yeah.
So it's Dallas, Fort Worth, and all their suburbs.
Yeah.
And it's Austin and their suburbs. And so people can get it shipped to them and know it came directly from Holy Cow Beef, and that our cattle have never had any antibiotics or growth hormones, no pesticides, no herbicides on the cattle. We don't support that business model at all. It's $0 to support that model. And that's the consumer has the ultimate power through their purchasing dollars to support the American rancher or to support, crony capitalism, feedlot industry, Tom Vilsack, the USDA, all those cronies. We're already paying them their salary, and then they get the kickbacks from all the private industry. We're just such a corrupt society today, to be honest.
It's amazing how third world we have become, or I think we've always been. We just didn't know it was behind a veil, and we had this illusion that we were, this amazing country, and we are in spirit. We just have to get there in material, 3D.
Well, and podcasts like yours obviously are what is needed. And so thank you very much for offering that to your listeners.
And you're reaching the population out there that if they will choose with their purchasing dollar, which business model do they want to support? Take the time to support your local growers of organic produce and your beef ranchers, your pig ranchers, chicken farms that are doing it right. It is certainly possible. Get closer to your farmers that are doing it right and support them.
So
and it's a great gift to give someone too, because groceries are so expensive now. No, every time people grocery shop, it's like it's dreadful. So giving someone a box of really good quality beef is actually a really great gift. if there's
is.
someone that's interested in that.
That is so true.
Point well
I mean,
made.
why are we still buying another blouse or another, jewelry?
Right.
We all really barely wear the same jewelry all the time anyway, so buy beef.
No, for real. As a matter of fact, Carlisle's dad, he's so hard to buy for. Men that have money, they go get what they want to get. And so every, birthday or Christmas, we're always struggling what to get him. And so Carly had the idea, gosh, like 3 or 4 years ago, to just send him a box of ribeyes.
Yeah.
And he loves it. They're just sitting in the freezer and he uses it, It really is a wonderful gift. And I also, Anne, if you could maybe touch on for, people that maybe haven't seen this before, just a really quick summary of the healing side to really good beef, because my dad has stage 4 cancer and we're changing his world with the really good quality meats, and in particular goat milk, which is raw goat milk, which is really unbelievable to me that something that simple could be helping him completely. Every single symptom is gone from his cancer. Now his cancer is still there, but it's lowering every time we go and check.
Wow.
Good news.
Yeah, very good. So as Weldon was talking about the grass-fed label and coming into relationship with your rancher, a lot of ranchers are using the word grass-fed when they too are still finishing on grain. And that's not necessarily a super bad thing, but when you finish on grass and it's all organic grass, you're going to have that omega-3 ratio, which it's eating food that is super high in omega-3 and getting healthy fats is what keeps cancer at bay. So being in ketosis as much as you can when you're a cancer patient is the key, but also, like you said, fueling him with the highest quality meat that you can get. So our beef, actually, because we're certified, it has been tested. We have 1 omega-3 to 3 omega-6s. Ideally, you want anywhere between 1 and 4. The best ideal would be 1 and 1, but ideally you want 1 omega-3 to 4, and then a lot of those autoimmune diseases will go away. Cancer will stay at bay. So consuming that ratio is what you want to do. When you are a grass-fed rancher that they call grass-fed under the new label, and you finish on grain, even if you're a small rancher doing it in your pasture, those ratios change dramatically from 1 omega-3 to 20 omega-6s. So you begin to introduce some of those autoimmune disease and get inflammation, et cetera, get some markers. But when they come straight out of the feedlot, we're seeing 1 omega-3 to 50 omega-6s. And that's when you're absolutely, and besides that, there's a lot of other things. It's harder to assimilate the vitamin E that comes out of an animal. There's not as much conjugated linoleic acid, all of that when they're coming out of a fed environment. When you eat something that you weren't designed to eat, your body is going to lack nutritional value.
And I'll give this to your listeners in a different dynamic. When you take grass-fed cattle, because that's what the USDA was saying, they said all cattle eat grass at some point in their life, therefore all cattle can be labeled grass-fed. However, when it goes to the feedlot, after 90 days in the feedlot eating corn and soy that's GMO, you lose roughly 80% of the omega-3s, the vitamin E, the conjugated linoleic acid. So major nutritional components you've lost because they're not eating grass anymore.
Right.
It's the green in forage that is full of chloroplasts that makes chlorophyll green, that makes the plant green, that those cattle want. That's the way God designed their rumen to work. And now we're feeding them all this starch, and the soy's in there too. And now we got the soy estrogen thing going on, and there's too much estrogen mimickers in our diet. And then we have issues like that's going on right now with the Bud Light thing, where too many of our population have too much estrogen in their system and not enough omega-3 to help balance that out.
Right.
And so this tripping over ourselves to see how fast we can get to the death of the human civilization to make a profit is what is really ruining this country.
Yeah.
They don't really care what the health of the population is. The pharmaceutical companies benefit from it. All these big woke hospitals benefit from it. I don't trust 90% of the doctors that I would interact with today. They've all been, baptized in the water of this
pharmaceutical
Yeah,
model.
and I think they've been hazed too. If you look at how a doctor's treated, and I've talked about this before, they go through almost this nightmare protocol when they're interning. They're working several days in a row. Why? If they have the coverage, why wouldn't you put them on regular hours, either night or day? Like it's crazy. They break them down, and they repeat, and they regurgitate, and it's just. I feel like it's a sort of a mind control in a way.
I agree.
I think it's called indoctrination.
There you go.
Yep.
They've indoctrinated them. Anyone that goes through an ag degree program at any of the state universities is going to come out believing exactly opposite of what the truth really is. They've been indoctrinated, miseducated, and these farmers will, go to their death fighting you and saying, I know how to farm. All I'll do is call up, my local seed company and get all the Monsanto GMO seed and then spray it with glyphosate. And I mean, we're killing our environment. We're polluting our rivers and our waterways, our underground water, so that Monsanto, Bear Crop Science, and then all the feedlot and all the things that supports the pharmaceutical industry can make money. It's all about money. And so money, the root of all evil, really stems to money.
So true. So true. And so tell me, like, how can we highlight you guys best? Because we talked about maybe sharing, you guys have a new website. We talked about sharing, recipes. What would be ideal for you guys? Let's just turn that direction.
Well, so I'm not very good with technology, but do you want to show the website? Do you want to go over some of those?
Yeah, I already put on there. If you share screen, you just click on share screen, and then you go to your website. You know what? I could maybe do it in the background here. You guys could, Carlisle, will you take over for just a minute while I can prep my computer?
Yeah.
Thanks, babe.
We'll see how this goes. What's so funny? Because we were just talking about glyphosate, and I just started, I don't know if anyone here knows about the Ion Biome, the company. It's called Ion, which stands for Intelligence of Nature. And I'm a big solutions person. Like if there's a problem, because a lot of people don't know that, they talked about this at the health summit, because glyphosate can actually contribute to leaky gut and cause your gut to be permeable, because once ingested, it begins to act like an antibiotic. Right. And I think that lady, I wish I remembered her name, from the health summit we were at, talks about how our lungs have a microbiome as well. When we're breathing in the glyphosate, it's going to put little tiny microscopic holes in our lung microbiome and things like that. I hope I'm not misquoting her, but it's so interesting. So I just started taking, fulvic and humic acid, like the little minerals, actually help detox glyphosate from your body and rebuild up like the cellular structures in your stomach. So if anyone, besides the best thing you can do is to cut out glyphosate from your diet as much as possible, and to research the foods highest in it, like wheat, corn, soy, beer, and then other things like cherries, oranges, berries, like the fruits with really permeable skin, but then also to, get things like glycine from bone broth or beef gelatin, things like that help protect your gut from glyphosate and help detox it as well, because does a number on your immune system.
Right.
So just to highlight what you just said, we take, we mineralize every day because we're drinking distilled water. A lot of the minerals have been removed. And so we remineralize with a supplement every day to get those minerals into our diet.
We do fulvic as well.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay. Well, I have it figured out.
Oh, good.
Thank you, Carlisle. And I'm really glad that I didn't have it figured out yet, because you did such a great job. I love what you just said. You need to speak up more, girl.
Really quickly about what Carlisle said. Sometimes some of the smaller ranchers that actually feed their cattle out, they're very proud that they don't feed corn and soy, but they are feeding wheat and wheat is a heavy glyphosate product. And so that's still being transmitted through the meat. And so just be aware, really get to know your rancher and find out, what are they feeding? What actually are they getting? Because if you're really sensitive to glyphosate, or educated about that, you're going to want to know.
And just so you know, the farmers don't have to spray glyphosate on their wheat. They do that to kill it and to desiccate it, which means dry it out.
Right.
But, God really already knew how to make all this work to our benefit.
Amazing, right?
Can you imagine the human being is trying to mimic God or take God's place. So Monsanto has taught through the state ag departments, all these wannabe farmers, to spray their wheat or maize with glyphosate to kill it faster, dry it out, and get it ready for market faster. We didn't do that in the old days. My granddad never sprayed 1 ounce of glyphosate in his life, and he still grew wheat. And he waited for nature to let it mature and finally get ready to be harvested.
Right.
But no, Monsanto's got all these professors in ag saying, you got to get that done faster, so spray it with glyphosate. So that's an extra input for the farmer. Of course, you, the taxpayer, are paying for most of the farmer's revenue right now anyway. If that's a subject for another podcast. We call it farmer welfare, and it really is welfare for the farmer, because it's a bad business model. It's not going to make them enough money to be regenerative long-term, but Monsanto doesn't really care about that. They know that their farmer population is decreasing and they have to make the money while they can.
Sure.
But at some point, we're not going to be supporting Monsanto.
Yeah.
Well, I hope and pray that happens. So, okay, here we go. I'm going to share my screen. And did that work, everybody?
Yes, that's
Okay.
it. That's it.
Fantastic. All right, now tell me what to click on.
Well, that's green
Give us a
grass
tour.
that those cattle are grazing,
Yeah.
just so you can see it.
Yeah, and that's my horse's ears down there in the bottom of that screen.
Oh.
Oh,
I know. So go ahead and click on Texas monthly deliveries.
Okay, here we go. Going to Texas monthly deliveries. Whoa. Wow, you guys did a great job upgrading it.
Yeah, thank you. So this is how you begin to shop. You can actually just hit the shop button, or you can choose, do you want a shipping? With shipping, we have very designated boxes. They're already, we know what ships best and what doesn't ship best. We also know that when we just open up our entire, we have like 48 different beef cuts and all the other proteins. When we open up everything to shipping, we get people that I want 100 ribeyes, send them this way. It's like, wait. You've got to help us stay sustainable. But our monthly delivery people have access to everything that we offer, because God just seems to have worked it out that when we go to Dallas, we sell literally almost 4 whole animals all the time. We've got some amazing steak buyers. We've got the homeschoolers that want a bunch of ground beef and roasts. And, so we just seem to be able to get a good balance. So the shipping is different, but here, because we chose the Texas one, you can choose whatever category you want, or you can just scroll down. But the featured products, I don't really care for that, the way they're doing that, but I can talk about, if you want to click on beef, I can go through and talk about how I best like to prepare things. So the very first row is all of our steaks, with the exception of the flat iron. All of our steaks, grass finished beef is naturally leaner. And so because it's naturally leaner, it's going to cook a whole lot faster. And with the steaks, you don't really want to take a grass finished beef steak beyond medium. And in fact, it's even pushing medium. It tends to get tougher because the muscle seizes, because there's not a lot of fat there. Even after letting it rest, if it's beyond medium, it's just going to be a little bit tougher of a chewability, et cetera. So for me, I like mine on the rare to medium rare side, with the exception of the fillets, which are 2 inches thick. All of our steaks are 1 1/4 inch. We usually do a really hot grill or a hot cast iron, 4 minutes each side, and then set it aside and let it rest 5 to 7 minutes. So that's a pretty simple thing to do. at this stage where I'm at, to me, it's all in the sauce. I mean, we have done a lot of cooking with no seasoning at all on our beef, and then we'll put it up next to like someone else's beef, even another grass finished beef rancher. There's something out in West Texas with our mineral content of our soil that God has just blessed us with an extremely tasty, robust beef flavor. Isn't that,
Yeah,
is that
that's
a
a good
good
way to
way to
describe it.
describe it? But definitely compared to grain finished, which it tends to be more washed out, and then it's really all in the seasoning.
If you take a steak of ours and sit it next to a steak from the grocery store, ours is going to be a much richer, darker.
Yes.
Yeah, you can see it, especially.
I can attest to that because that is Carly and I, when we first got it, we put them right next to each other. I couldn't believe the difference, especially of the filet.
Yeah. Yep.
And the grain finished is going to be a little bit pinker. And let me talk just really quickly,
Sure.
Carmen, about our process that we go through. Very few producers of beef go through this whole process. So our cattle are killed, and we do something we call dry aging for at least 10 days, but all the way up to 14 days, depending on how much back fat that animal has. But the dry aging is going to dehydrate somewhere between 6 and 8% of the water weight of that carcass. The
Right.
Industry or the big processors, the big five we talked about earlier, they got a law passed many years ago that allows them to rehydrate a carcass with tap water. Roughly 8% of the body weight is pumped into the carcass. And so you can actually literally see that. You put a pound of ground from Walmart and a pound of our ground in a skillet, and you'll see all the water come out of the Walmart ground and just boil off. So the consumer's paying roughly 15% more
Sure is.
for nothing, because it's all, the difference is we dehydrated 6% and they rehydrated 8%, and it's all water. So tap water in the US isn't the best water in the world, with all the pharmaceutical particles that are in our groundwater. And so you're ingesting pharmaceuticals and chemicals when you're eating conventional beef. And we've dehydrated ours, and there's no chemicals on our property, so that we don't have any of that. And so it's a really important thing that we do. Then we take the steaks from that carcass and we vacuum seal them as individuals, as primals, and then we wet age that product for another 2 weeks. So basically that cut of meat, let's say the tenderloin roast, is marinating in its own juices, and that allows the bacteria that are in our muscles. All of us have, things in our muscles, bacteria, and it allows that bacteria to begin to break down the cartilage and the tougher parts of the meat. They consume it, they break it down. And people might think, oh my gosh, that is terrible to hear that. But that's Mother Nature. It's always been that way. But it tenderizes the meat even more. So we'll put our steak up against almost any other conventional steak, and ours will be just as tender without any mechanical tenderizer or chemical tenderizer on it, because of that dry aging, reducing the water, and then wet aging those steaks.
The first time that I ever did a side-by-side steak comparison was we had a local restaurant here who wanted to pick up our steaks for very seasonally during football season and during Christmas. And so they wanted to take our New York and compare it to their New York strips. So we went and had this taste test, and we tasted theirs first, and was like, oh yeah, this is great steak. This is good steak. I mean, it's pretty high-end steakhouse. I was like, this is really good. And then they brought ours out, and I was like, oh my God. And I made myself, because like, this is so much different. But everybody, all the management was like, oh my gosh, it is. So anyways, that was the first time there was a significant difference between, and like I said, they're a high-end steakhouse. They too are aging their steaks. The high-end steakhouses will wet age steaks for no less than 30 days. Anyways, you can just tell the difference, because it's the same meat that Applebee's steaks are versus a high-end steakhouse, and the difference is in the aging.
Right.
And it's only our premium steaks, just ribeye, filet, New York, And the
Sirloin.
boneless sirloins are wet aged.
And so go through like just as far as which ones have the most like fat, like not gristle, but like fat, which ones are the most tender, which ones do you have to, you know, do a little bit more work with, like kind of run through that for us.
Okay. The ribeye obviously has the most fat.
Marbling.
Marbling, as you can see it. Yep. And if you're a carnivore, you're going to eat every single one of those.
Every
all
bit of it.
Yep. Yep. So the tenderloin fillet is actually one of the most leanest cuts. And that's why, especially once the flavor's been washed out by being fed corn, you'll see it wrapped with bacon when it's served in a restaurant. And that's so that the bacon fat can give it flavor because it's very, very bland.
So in the conventional restaurant industry, you don't have flavor in the tenderloin. It all comes from the pork of the bacon that's wrapped around it. So it's disguised. And you're paying $30 a plate for this tenderloin, and you're getting pork flavor.
But the tenderloin is definitely the most tender on the animal. It's a non-working muscle, so it just cuts like butter. You know, it's just very, very tender. The New York strip is probably our favorite one. It tends to be a little bit leaner and it's easier to consume all of it with the exception of that back fat. Sometimes I consume it, sometimes I don't, depends on how much it's rendered down. Then the top sirloin or even the bone-in sirloin, to me, that is such an affordable go-to steak. It's what I make fajitas with. I don't like the skirt. It's a very difficult piece, especially grass finished, to actually cook perfectly. I do sell out every single month. So I've got all my customers who love skirt.
You've converted them.
I've converted them, but I love having fajitas or stir fry or kebabs with the sirloin. That's just such a flexible steak to do a lot of different fun recipes as opposed to just eating steak and potatoes or steak and vegetables. So that sirloin's really, really flexible. The next one is the flat iron, and that flat iron is the second most tender steak, and then followed by the hanger steak, which I don't see the hanger in here on this page.
It's later.
It's probably going to be somewhere else. But anyways, so the flat iron is the second most tender steak. It's a great value steak. It's a good steak if it's just you're cooking for two people, because usually one package is going to be about 0.7 pounds, so less than a pound.
And that steak is only 3/8 of an inch thick.
Yep.
So it's very easy to cook. Just a minute on each side and it's done.
Yeah, 2 minutes on each side and it's done. You still want to.
Do you have to let it sit like you do the ribeye afterwards?
Always. You always want a steak to sit, always. And the reason being is when it hits something hot, just like your hand, you would seize immediately. This is a muscle. All of these are muscles. And so they seize. And so the reason you're letting it rest is because you're letting it relax and all the juices get redistributed. And so you don't want to cut right into it, because then if you cut right into it, you stop the redistribution of juices and you're only eating the seized meat. So you want to let it rest.
That's probably the most important thing we have to recommend to our consumers, our customers, is let your meat rest. And they all say, oh, I want to eat it really hot. And I said, well, don't eat steaks.
I know.
Because if you don't let it rest 5 at a minimum, and I always recommend 7 to 8 minutes, and just get used to eating your steak that way, it's so much more tender.
Yeah.
Oh, it really does make a difference. Carly and I have been waiting 10 minutes. I'm glad we can wait 2 minutes less.
Well, good for you.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the ground beef. Talk to us about that.
So I have a point. You're looking at all the fat in the steaks, and the carnivores and the keto people all really just want all that fat. But our ground that you see right below on that red label is 80-20. So it's 20% fat. There's not many cuts of meat that you can get that are feedlot finished that have 20% fat in a steak. So you really get that fat. And so when that fat is melting as you're cooking it in your pan, use that oil on what you're eating. I mean, if you're keto, that's what you want. You want more and more healthy fat. So we don't throw any fat from our cooking process into the trash.
Yeah.
We're going to consume that fat.
Yeah.
I mean, people go out and buy CMT oil, pay a lot of money for it, and they could be consuming the fat from the various
The
cuts
ground beef.
Yeah.
and from the ground beef.
Yeah.
Well, it's so cute because my dad is so old school and he's always been like this Marine that was in great shape and stuff, but he really was imprinted with fat is bad. And so the first couple times I brought him ribeyes for dinner, he was cutting around the fat and leaving it. And I didn't know because a lot of times I will just drop off dinner and run to whatever I have to be doing for myself. And so the other day I had him here for dinner and he was eating it. And I'm like, why aren't you eating the fat? That's the whole reason I bought the ribeye. Like, you need the fat. You're on a 70% fat diet. And he's like, I can eat it? And I'm like, yes. And he starts eating it. He's like, this is good.
Oh, I love that. I love
So he's been
that.
awakened. Isn't that great?
Yeah.
It's so funny. It's so funny.
Yeah. Yeah. So the ground beef definitely cooks just like normal ground beef. I always hate saying normal or conventional because grass finish used to be the conventional way. So
Right.
what's so interesting about grass finished ground beef, and you can see the slide next to it is actually breakfast sausage. We actually make a beef breakfast sausage. It's phenomenal.
Wow.
We if you cook it side by side to, let's say, a feedlot or I'll just pick on Walmart, a Walmart pound of ground beef next to our pound of ground beef, you're going to watch their steam a lot and they're going to lose a lot of water weight, and you're going to watch our sizzle. So
I was just going to say, I bet it sizzles.
it is sizzle. It's sizzling because it's that really good fat. And when you're finished cooking those and you put them back on the scale, 1 pound to 1 pound, you're going to see ours is yielding 15% more than theirs. And so theirs is filled with
Water.
tap water. Yes. And that's the steam. So you're actually paying for water and you're losing it when you're cooking it. And
When that water evaporates from the Walmart beef, it leaves behind the residuals of all the pharmaceuticals and chemicals that are in our tap water.
that are in our unfiltered tap water.
I mean, fluoride, benzene.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
I mean, where does that go? It doesn't evaporate. It's left behind in the meat.
Yeah, people don't know that. So when conventional processors slaughter a beef, they want to cool it down and package it as fast as they can. So they hook up and cool it with just tap water. We actually move ours into a cooler to begin to cool naturally, to just let that temperature come down slowly. And there it sits, like Weldon said, for 14 days. So we actually lose about 7% of our yield in just letting it come to the right temperature slowly and to dehydrate slightly to make the flavor more intense and more tender. But they're all about time is money, time is money. And
And
so
to quantify that for your listeners, if we have a 500-pound carcass, it's split in half, but it's still a 500-pound carcass. If it dehydrates 7% of that water weight, that's 35 pounds of water that
Wow.
leaves that muscle, and you're left with the 93% of meat that's there. It still has some water in there, but not the 35 pounds that you would have.
So basically people are paying for poison.
Yes, and water with
Yes,
poisonous
yes.
things in it.
yes, yeah, they just don't really realize that. So the next, as you slide over, like you've got your cursor on the breakfast sausage patties, my favorite, so easy in the morning, pre-done. You can just, it's like a cookie, just grab and go. And so I love those breakfast sausage patties.
We had
You eat them raw, and I'm just
I
kidding.
know. Grab them and go.
but we had them literally this morning for breakfast.
Yeah, we have company. We have a couple of girls actually from that conference in Tennessee that have stopped by to visit us. And so,
Oh.
but yep, we had those this morning, and it's just great. So there's the skirt steak. In the olden days, it used to be thrown into the grind. Modern Tex-Mex restaurants have popularized it with tons of chemical tenderizers to make it palatable in your fajitas. But so if you do enough marinating, or if you slow cook this, it'll turn out fabulous. The flavor is amazing when it's slow cooked. If you're going to do it for fajitas on the grill, you just got to really play with it until you understand how that steak behaves, because it's grass finished. So
Right. And that's why the top sirloin steak is sold out, because you've been selling everybody on this
Yes, I sell
rather
that.
than this.
I push that. But I mean, the skirt steak sells out too. So I've got people that know how to cook it and they love it, and it's one of their favorites, and it's a less expensive steak, so it's a good go-to. So
Carly, we should order while we're sitting here. I'm like, I want a couple of ribeyes. I just won't show the credit card number.
Right.
the steak tips are just pre-cut. We're I don't know if it's our old processor, we just switched processors, or our new one. They're cutting them a little too big, and so we're still having to cut them. But anyways, we're working on getting those cut the whole point is that they're convenient. So that's what that is. And the tenderloin steak tips, oh gosh, what is my favorite recipe that I use with those?
Well, now she's put me on the spot.
I know it's with sour cream and stroganoff. Love. Yes, that is a high-end restaurant will use the tenderloin tips. So a tenderloin roast that the fillets are cut from actually has a point on the end, and so those tips are the point that doesn't look like a good steak. So you cut that but it's still the same quality of meat. So tenderloin tips are a great value.
A little bit less than the tenderloin fillet.
Yep. So
so one of my favorite listeners is in here, Deborah Cliver, and she said, "Do you ship anywhere?"
Yeah. Well, anywhere. Yes. So
depends on the box, right?
Correct. Yes.
But if she,
all right, we'll go through that next, Deborah. We'll show you.
Yep.
If she calls and talks to us, we will accommodate her eating preferences.
Yes.
Okay. That's fair.
So the flank steak, I've even done it with skirt steak and tenderized round. Those are my flat steaks. Those for me are the most fun to stuff and roll and cook slow. And the amount of flavor that our meat puts into like a tomato-based sauce, or even a rouladen or a bracciola, those are my favorite steaks to do those types of dishes with. And especially in the winter, but it just becomes so yummy. But that flank steak does great on a grill too. I happen to really like to cook the skirt slower, but that flank steak will do fine on the grill. But I love those flat steaks to do fun things with. So
should I go to the next page or go to a different section? What's next?
Let's go to the next page because I want to talk about the roasts, because the roasts are my favorite.
One more page here. Oh, wow. There's so many cuts. Wow.
No. There's the tenderized round. Those are the flat. The most famous that's used for is chicken fried steak. That's what if you're trying to be healthy, you'll do a Swiss steak instead of deep frying, flour. That tri-tip roast, it's a best known in California. That we hardly could sell it at all, but except for to our California customers. Now we sell it all the time, but in California, they slow roast it in a crock pot like a brisket, or they'll smoke it or something. Here especially in Texas, people just put a good sear on it and cook it like a steak. So we personally do that too. We just put it on the grill and then we serve it family style. So, but the sirloin.
How many pounds is something like this?
About 1.5 pounds is average, but it can be closer to 1 pound all the way up to 2.5 pounds. But I would say about 1.75. Yeah. It's fun. That's a very fun cut. So the next two roasts, the sirloin tip and the rump roast, though for me,
they're boneless.
They're both boneless. I like to cook them to temperature about 130 to 135. Some people go to 140. That's okay. And then slice it super thin. We have a deli slicer here, so we slice it super thin. And I have roast beef sandwiches, for salads, for meat roll-ups, cream cheese on it.
How long do you cook it?
To temperature, she said.
Temperature, which is not timed.
Oh, okay.
But both of those, if you cook them all day, they will shred. So you can shred those as well. So a lot of people will cook that sirloin tip roast and pull it, make it pulled. I Also, we make jerky out of the sirloin tip roast. That's a leaner roast, not a lot of marbling. The rump roast will usually have that back fat covering. But so when you're making jerky, you don't want any fat. You want to try to have it as minimum as you can. The next one, I can't really see, it's covered up, but is it chuck?
Chuck roast. Yeah.
Yeah, chuck roast and the arm roast are very similar. But as the rancher's wife, a lot of people say, what's your favorite cut? And hands down, it's the chuck. I consume every bit of that fat. It's cooked. Usually I like to cook ours 8 to 10 hours. I put it in at 8 o'clock in the morning. It's ready at 6 o'clock in the evening. I tend to like a dark beer, and people with wheat sensitivities, you can use bone broth. You can use tomato juice. You can use any kind of liquid, really, even water. But in the old days, in feedlot, like when my mother was cooking a roast, she only cooked it for 3.5 hours because it's grain finished, it has a lot of fat. And it cooks much differently.
But she cooked it at 375.
She cooked it at
And
375.
we're cooking at the lowest setting on the crock pot, which is probably 225.
225 to 250 for 8 to 10 hours. And it is the most flavorful piece that you've ever had. So that is hands down my favorite. And the arm roast too. I like cooking with a bone. Both those have bones in there. That anytime you can cook with a bone, it's going to add flavor and nutrition. So it's just a great.
So Carmen, let me interject something here.
Sure.
Because we're still on all beef.
Mhm.
And so when you're on the steaks, I want to share something with your listeners. When they put the steak on the plate, they let it rest for 7 to 8 minutes. They're going to pick up their knife and fork, and they're going to start cutting their steak. That red juice that is on the plate is not blood. The muscles of our animals have been bled out, meaning our animals, they cut the carotids and the heart beats until there's no blood left to pump out. So our animals actually die of asphyxiation in the sense that there's no blood circulating through the muscles.
Sure.
And so that steak fluid is called myoglobin, and that the definition of that is cellular fluid. But that's the nutrition of the meat. It's the amino acids,
The minerals.
and what am I thinking? It's the
Minerals.
but
The enzymes.
the enzymes. Yes, the enzymes are in there. So really, when you throw that into your sink, your drain is going to be healthier than you are. So you want to consume that. Often, if we have any bread, we'll just sop up
Soak it up.
juice. But
I soak
take
it up with the meat.
Yeah, I take
That's
each
like-
Yeah.
cut and we dip it back into that sauce that's on the plate. So just the consumer needs to know, people are squeamish about blood. That is not blood. It just happens to be red. And
Sure.
it's called myoglobin. They can look it up. It'll tell them what it is, and it's extremely healthy for you.
And the animals are not suffering at all during that process. They've been stunned. And so they don't know. They're just, it's like unconscious. So
Yeah.
they're not
Been
during
knocked
that
out.
processing part. Because I know we have a
Most
lot
of the people that care about that probably don't eat meat anyway.
I know.
I don't know, but
No.
I always tell people, let everyone get to where they're supposed to be. I mean, there's people that think, oh, I'm so evolved, I'm like a breatharian, and all I do is eat, air. And and I mean, there's people that do that, and great for them. I mean, whatever works for you. But obviously other people aren't there yet, and let them get there if that's the highest and best,
Right. Exactly. Yep.
Don't judge.
Yes, exactly. The baby back ribs, I love to cook those low and slow until they're virtually falling off the bone. And then I'll put more, I usually make my own barbecue sauce, but I'll put more barbecue sauce, put them under the broiler or put them on the grill to get the barbecue sauce to crunch and to
That's
get
a
it.
great, I always have wondered, because I do a slow one too, and it just falls off the bone.
Right.
But I always wondered how I could get that done, and that's a great idea.
To do that. That's how you want to do that. So, and the same with the short ribs. And then I can't see the next one.
I'll throw something in here about the short rib.
ribs, then there's spicy smoked German sausage.
Okay.
The short ribs will have a lot of fat in there on that dish, and you want to consume all of it. It's going to be very tender. It's going to be almost gelatinous. And that's the essence of the short rib, is to eat the fat. There's going to be some meat, but you want to eat all of that fat.
It's so
Okay.
good. It just melts. It just
I
melts.
need
like
to probably order that for my dad. He's
yeah.
supposed
Yeah,
to be on
that's-
70% fat, but he's doing great. I mean, I don't think we've hit it, consistently, but we're doing the best we can.
Yeah, yeah. The German sausage is another favorite because it's fully cooked. We love to throw it on the grill or in a pan just to render the fat, just to get it a little bit crispy, just to kind of bring it. There are mothers out there that will actually slice it like little pepperonis, give it to their kids for school lunch. And so
Right.
it's fully cooked. It's a super easy cut. There's so many, because it's fully cooked, there's so many applications. We serve it with eggs, traditionally with sauerkraut, Italian dishes like big pasta dishes with lots of that. I also make gumbo with that sausage. So that's such a wonderful, flexible. And then we, at the farmer market, we just sell sausage on a stick, or when we
Yeah,
work out.
that's awesome. I love it.
Yeah. And the summer sausage, a lot of people are like, what is summer sausage? So it is best served room temperature, to be honest. We do keep it in the refrigerator, but it's best served room temperature, as is good cheese is best served room temperature. So when you're entertaining, take those two things out an hour before your guests arrive so that it is served at room temperature. But it's obviously it's pictured there with cheese and wine. That's traditional.
And maybe your dad would like that summer sausage, Carmen.
As a snack.
It's got a lot of fat in it, and it's just you can be munching on a stick of that for 2 days, just whenever you're.
So that's already cooked?
That one
Yes.
is, yeah. So you're not cooking.
Ooh, yeah. Thank you, Weldon. I didn't even think of that, but that is a great idea.
In fact, all my pregnant customers, they don't keep crackers by their bedside. They keep summer sausage by their bedside. And they
And
said,
you can just leave it out of the refrigerator?
yes, yep, you can.
Wow.
It's just
It's
especially
just dry.
like,
It's like dehydrated or something.
well, it's very, very moist, but people don't like, food is not as fragile as you think.
Beef.
Specifically beef, specifically
Okay.
red meat. So wild game, all of that. It's just not that fragile. But yeah,
That's so interesting. I didn't know that.
Yep. So, I mean, and they don't keep the whole log out. They just keep their 2 pieces that they're going to consume
Got it.
immediately. So,
And so, Carmen, I'll throw this in for our farmers market people. We've attended thousands of farmers market over our career. And the best, most just joyful moment we have is when someone's pushing around a 2-year-old in their stroller, and they get a piece of our German sausage, a stick of that, or the summer sausage. And these little bitty kids, we see them walking around in the market and they're gnawing on our beef. And these kids have this
Oh.
big smile on their face, and the oil's dripped all over their chin, and they're just smacking it and having a good time. And we probably have half a dozen really very current pictures we could send to you.
Yeah.
And you would just say, wow, these are really young kids, and they've gone wild over just eating fresh beef.
Yes.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to do a pre-order as soon as we hang up. Oh my gosh. I am so excited about that because it's kind of gotten very boring for my dad, and he doesn't really have snacks other than cheese, and he has to have raw cheese. And so this will be so cool. And he loves salami and things like that, but I didn't trust anything in the store,
So
Right.
Carmen, this is a great suggestion for your dad. The summer sausage paired with Veldhuizen cheese. It's all A2 brown-hided raw milk cheese from
Ooh.
Dublin, and their last name is Veldhuizen. So it's
How do what is that cheese called? Say it again.
We sell it, so you can put it on.
Oh, I don't have to worry about it.
We'll get it for you.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
if you're a woman, you're going to eat our summer sausage with a really good almond flour cracker, cheese, and a glass of wine.
Yeah.
The guys are going to eat it. Maybe your dad will. Summer sausage, the cheese, the cracker, and a glass of beer.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I love it. This is so, I mean, I am literally so happy I thought to go through this whole thing. Because at first I was like, I don't know if people will be like really focusing in, but I knew you guys would have all the little nuances that would make it magical to go through this with you. So this worked out so good. I love it.
Good. So do you want to go to the next one? The beef
What?
oxtail, that's
That's
it's
the tail.
very, there's a lot of my customers that are very cultural that make a wonderful dish that I've actually never made. So, but for me, if I use that, I usually use it in my bone broth. I like to make my bone broth with meat on it. And that tail is not bone, it's cartilage. And so it throws off a lot of gelatin in the bone broth, and other, vital nutrients too. So, and that's something I just can't keep in stock. So the people who know about that and know how to cook it, just gobble it up the moment we have it. So that's a very
Awesome.
item.
All right, tell me where to go next.
Okay, well, you can, if you want to keep going on the beef, or we can switch to a
Let's
different
go
protein.
to the bones.
All right, where would that be? Like
Number
the-
3.
All right.
And you're going to see bones.
Okay.
Okay, so the marrow bone is touted to be the most nutritious bone. And that's, sometimes we get people that will only order marrow. We cut them medallion style, rather than canoe style. Canoe style is what you see in restaurants, and they scoop that out. We cut them medallion style because specifically for bone broth, it's just easier. I do have some people that'll roast them and scoop it out. People will give it raw to their dogs, various things like that. This is not the best bone to give to large dogs for sure, but little dogs can do well with it. But the marrow is definitely the most. The rib bone is another source of marrow. It's not the best source, but it is a source of marrow. So it's a good supplement to put into your bone broth. It's a very inexpensive bone. We put those on sale a lot. I don't see the other bones.
And just the whole thing with the bones is, if you want to share that recipe, or we share it on the website. But
Is it on resources?
Yes, under resources, there's 27, is it 27 recipes? It says right
Right
there.
here, recipes we love.
Download the recipes we love.
So the bone broth
It's in
recipe
there.
Oh,
is,
you can just download it. I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's that. So anyways, the
and it's
recipe
Sally
is-
Fallon's recipe, and it's just to die for. It's very, very old.
Right.
It's proven to drink a cup of bone broth every day. You're going to get a lot of fat in that bone broth, and all these nutrients, the vitamins you get from making bone broth. And if you cook these yourself, make your own bone broth, it costs $2.50 a quart
Very inexpensive.
to make it.
Right.
Very
Yeah. And if you buy it, it's what, Carly, 8? What are we spending to forget if we
I charge 10.
10?
Yeah, I charge $10 a quart for us.
Can you buy marrow separate? Like
Yep.
just you
Yep.
sell that? Where's
Yep,
that?
right there, beef marrow at the top left.
Top left.
Oh, okay. That's it with the bones. Got it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, it's in the bones.
So we cut the marrow bone, the ankle bone, the knuckle bone.
I was going to say, what's not pictured there,
Are they on 4?
it might be. This is good for me to look at this again because
Yeah.
there they are.
Oh, there it is. There
Yep,
it is.
the knuckle and the ankle. So the
Wow.
knuckle is the best source of collagen. The ankle is the best source of gelatin. So when you're making beef bone broth, you actually do want one of each different kind of bone because you need all of those nutrients in that one pot. So I like to also put that meaty shank soup bone in there. Again, I like beef in my bone broth because it adds a better depth of flavor and it gives more protein. And so, yeah, it's funny looking bone, isn't it? Ankle bone.
Yeah.
Less gelatin. in that.
It's gnarly.
There is way more collagen in that
It
ankle.
looks like petrified wood.
I know, right? Right. Yes. Yeah.
If you go to that meaty soup shank, it basically is a marrow bone with a lot of the meat left around the bone.
Yeah. So you can see all that.
Oh,
yes,
yeah. You can see it like right there.
Yep,
Yeah. That's
that's
the
it.
marrow. Yep. So,
Wow.
Very
Yeah.
cool. I see. Thank you so much for this. I feel like I just went to class and I love learning. This is so awesome.
Yeah.
Love
I know,
it.
I want to get some marrow bones.
Yeah. You need to. So you can see there's a fun one, beef bacon ends. That's a
Mhm.
really cool. I do all kinds of things with that. The most important thing, I'll soak my beans, I'll soak them twice, but then I season the beans with those beef bacon ends. I just think they give so much flavor. We'll slow cook those in stews. And it just adds a pop of a different flavor, a different bite. There's a ton of healthy fat in those little ends. Sometimes I painstakingly cut them very thin and then saute them with my vegetables,
Ooh.
little bacon bits in there. Our nephew likes to smoke them even further and make burnt ends out of the bacon ends. So they're burnt bacon ends. So they're amazing flavor. Anyways, that's a fun thing we do, those little bacon ends. We also do beef
Awesome.
bacon, which is phenomenal. So, and there's,
Wow, I'm loving this tour.
yeah.
And then,
So-
okay, we just went through beef. We're gonna have to come back and have you guys back and like teach us about chicken and cheese and all that. But let's show me the cheese that you said that my dad needs to get.
Yes, so this is Veldhuisen cheese, and they are all brown-hided animals, mostly Jerseys, and they're the A2 protein, which is what you want. They also have sheep milk cheese, which is what you'll see in that Fat Tail Tom and the mixed milk Gouda. Both of those two have sheep's milk in them.
Ooh.
This is like a Manchego style cheese,
Yeah.
a Parmesan-ish type of cheese. So that is so good. And I do
See, these are all things that I could just get for dad. He could put in his refrigerator and just take a knife to him every once in a while.
that redneck cheddar is Veldhuisen's #1 selling cheese. And it's just a good sharp cheddar cheese. That we have my favorite is that mixed milk Gouda. We don't have a photo. I'll have to get a photo of it, but it's half cow's milk, half sheep's milk. That's my favorite for sure. In fact, I was
I
munching
love Gouda. I love Gouda. So I will be buying that
on-
for
Yes.
sure.
Jalapeno cheddar, pretty standard, but it's funny. I was born and raised in Michigan, so I don't like super hot spicy, but I love the flavor of peppers. And that's what this cheese delivers.
It's more
Yes,
mild.
a tiny bit of zing to it, but the flavor is phenomenal. It's by far the best jalapeno cheese I've ever eaten. So
And
Yeah.
just so you know, Carmen, we've known this family for, let's say, 22 years.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
We've been buying their cheese just for 22
Yeah.
years.
This is
So, Weldon, is this the
Awesome.
one, the Dublin karst that you said would be really good with the summer sausage?
any of those.
Any of them? Okay,
Yeah, any
cool.
of them, any of them. But this is the most affordable one, Dublin karst. It's a good melter. It melts well. It's not as sharp as the redneck cheddar, so it's a good go-to cheese. So
Okay,
Where's
cool. Oh
Dublin
my
cheddar?
gosh, I love it.
probably not on there. We carry another cheese that is Weldon's favorite, and I'm not seeing it up here.
Okay, well,
designed-
see, aren't you glad we did this?
It's called Texas Star, and it's softer. It's a bit softer, and he
Oh, like a
Yeah.
goat milk or like a goat cheese or
not quite that soft, not quite that soft. But
okay.
but just a like these are hard cheeses, but
Yeah.
it's just a bit softer, and it's also a good melter, and it's milder than the cheddars. So
And you might
Okay.
advise your dad to do this. I'll cut a small piece off. So I'm cutting a chunk off, and then I go back and cut another smaller piece, and I can put it in my mouth, and the temperature of my body will melt that cheese slowly, and I let that flavor
I
walk
just
through
love
my
it.
taste buds for maybe 10 minutes with one little bite. And it's 10 minutes of just pure joy.
Oh my gosh, I am so sold. I'm buying all of them.
Yeah, we'll
We
do
are-
a live taste test.
Oh, that's a great idea, Car.
Yes,
the
I'll do
next
that,
time-
and then-
The next time you guys come on, we'll have the cheeses here and we'll have them together. We'll have a little cheese party.
yeah, that's a great idea. Great.
So it'll be a
idea.
cheese party.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. But a specialty cheese, A2, what'd you call it? A2 cheese.
Yeah, A2 protein. The A2 protein is much easier to digest. So your dad will do very well on that. It's just, and he'll get more of the protein value out. I mean, cheese, basically you want your dad eating cheese because it's primarily fat. It's, that's what it
Yep.
is. It's dehydrated and you're left kind of with the fat, but you want them to have that A2 protein because they'll get some protein that is actually digestible.
So here's a quick story, Carmen, for your listeners to just realize how bass-ackwards our whole economy is. I don't know if you noticed that word that I said.
Yes, I did. You could have used the real one. I wouldn't have been mad at you.
So A2 and A1 milk, it's been a controversy or a controversial subject probably for 200 years. But A2 milk is the healthier casein protein. A1 is produced almost exclusively by the Holstein breed, which dominates our dairy industry. Probably 95% of all of our milk comes from Holsteins, and it's A1, and it is associated with childhood asthma and allergies. And then when you pasteurize it, you're basically drinking white water. So I don't think anyone should pay for
Pasteurized milk. Yeah.
But when you get raw milk, now it's raw A2, full of enzymes. And there are people that have had certain kinds of inflammatory illnesses that have lived exclusively for many, many years, like 10 years or plus, just on A2 raw milk from brown-hided Jersey, dairy cattle. It's extremely healthy for you.
Yeah, this is just, you guys are the best. Thank you so much. Carlisle, do you have any closing questions or any comments that you want to share?
This is kind of a callback to the beginning of our conversation, but we talked a lot about the people in the government making something like regenerative agriculture farming more difficult, but is there anyone currently in office or running for office or someone that keeps tabs on this? Like, is there like a farmers for politics coalition thing or something? Like, is there anyone in the political sphere that you guys have your eye on that you think is actually going to be helpful in terms of legislation?
If I were you, I would join the U.S. Cattlemen's Association, and then you make a call and ask that question. They're the ones that are going to know who you need to support politically.
Yeah, okay. better than us. I mean, there's, it's hard to. I mean, we're not Democrat. We're not really Republican. We're really kind of. I wish that government wasn't so big.
Same.
I love Kennedy. I personally would like to see a ticket be Santis and Kennedy. I think bringing both those, a Democrat and a Republican who are not afraid to stand up to big tech and who aren't afraid to actually be educated. Kennedy's whole story is he didn't really want to know truth about vaccines. He didn't. Sure. Yeah, he had no desire at all to learn what he learned, but he listened, and he listened to a mother pour her heart out about her vaccine injured child. And he started to do his own research, and he finally took it. And now he's courageous enough to stand out there and talk about things that most people aren't. About the Joe Rogan thing, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that is now up to $2 million to debate that whatever that deal is going on.
Peter Hotez, who I have had my eye on him since April 2020, because I wanted to know what the heck was going on. And he was at Baylor at the time, and he was saying the exact opposite of what he's saying now. So then I started using him to prove to people stuff, and people are like, well, that's not what he's saying. He's saying this. And I was like, what? And then I go back and I can't even find the articles I was looking for. Like, I couldn't believe it. It was the first time I've ever seen stuff just disappear on a guy.
He got scrubbed.
Yeah.
He got censored.
Yeah.
It's wild. Well, thank you so much for being here. Tell everyone one more time where they can find you, where you are on social media, what your website is, and then we will roll and everybody can have a great weekend.
Yes, and happy 4th of July to everyone. So we are holycowbeef.com. That's the easiest. That's going to our website. We just went over that. Yep, just holy.
But there's a purpose to that holy. Meaning it's not WHOLLY, because it's holy, and there is a halo over our cow's head.
So there you go. We do have Facebook. We have Instagram. We're barely on Twitter, but we're on Twitter. So anyways, you can find us there too.
And just to let everyone know, there are boxes that ship anywhere in the US.
Yes.
If you call them and ask for specific cuts, they will accommodate, but you have to make the phone call. And if you live in Dallas or Austin, then you can do their delivery service. I've done it, and it literally comes to my door. I leave a cooler there, and they just put it in the cooler, and ding dong, it's here. And then you grab it, and then you look at how dark the meat is, and you're like, wow.
And for our Amarillo and Midland customers, we make a monthly delivery where they meet us, and then we distribute their orders.
Fun.
So we're covering Amarillo, Lubbock, Midland, Dallas, Fort Worth, and all the suburbs and all the little towns in between, and then Austin, and then we ship.
Right.
everywhere.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you so much, both of you. And you have to come back for the cheese party.
Yeah.
Yes. She's funny. I'll be there.